Welcome to the worst WWE superstars of 2019. We are going to start as quickly as possible because I have an honorable mentions list and it has at least above 15 wrestlers on it, and it's going to be sorted out by brand. So SmackDown and Raw, no NXT or 205 Live included. I mean, especially no NXT UK. So we're going to start with Raw. Rowan, EC3, Drew McIntyre, Eric Young, Jinder Mahal, No Way Jose, and Rusev, and the Iconics. I chose Rowan because he came from a surprise heel, a surprise lackey into an independent superstar, targeting the major dog in the company out of Roman Reigns, into now being a weirdo squashing over jobbers and wasting most of our time. It's not the first time he had a singles run, but that time the Authority were rolling over and it was a babyface, and the Wyatt family was sort of decked out and wasted back in 2014. Then part of the Bludgeon Brothers, he comes around now holding a stupid pet that we didn't even get like any little hints of what this thing even looks like. Still never held onto a singles belt. Luke Harper is still the Intercontinental Champion, and now he's released from the company. He asked for his release to see how wonderfully Rowan is going to be put up. At least he's having squash matches, but we know how it is when we give big wrestlers squash matches. It never works. Even when it gets you sort of over, you never develop into a superstar thanks to you won't face a guy over equal footing or show that you have an interesting character. Like at least Braun Strowman has his surprise physical attributes. Like the guy can run exceedingly fast. The dude can do a drop kick. He's surprisingly likable. Eric Rowan, he seems like a nice dude. He's not that bad in the ring. He's surprisingly athletic, but he's no spring chicken. The guy is not that interesting. We have EC3 that has done nothing since early 2019. The guy was in an NXT North American Championship ladder match back in NXT New Orleans the previous year when he had like at least the whole year of NXT to himself. And the guy was somewhat a main event look, but he comes around looking at least somewhat dominant, but he doesn't end up winning a belt. The guy comes around early 2019 after the equal shovelment of NXT talent pushed along early January, and then they did it again middle of the draft because we are so desperate to develop young talent, or at least guys we get from the indies, that we forget that we have to make a storyline or at least develop into characters that we can't with EC3. Thanks, his name is literally based on a character on TNA and former president of TNA. he comes around, and why couldn't we just give him his name? Something Bateman, I think. And he comes around on NXT showing that he's likable. He has the physique, and he obviously has a sort of charisma to him. What do we do? He goes 50-50 booking with Dean Ambrose in his final couple months of his contract. 50-50 booking for a guy leaving the company. Works for me. He comes around getting squashed by Braun Strowman, and most notable thing he does is becoming a jobber and chasing the 24/7 championship. We have Drew McIntyre. He's not a lost cause, but this year I thought was going to be his year. I really thought so. He is a tremendous wrestler. He's incredibly athletic. He feels legit threatening on the mic, and he comes around pinning guys like Roman Reigns, Jinder Mahal, Kurt Angle, Akira Tozawa, do we have to count that? Kevin Owens. Just guys you think that would like shovel him, and here he is pinning dudes. He gets in a overcooked feud with Roman Reigns for a majority of the year. Becomes a lackey with Shane McMahon for a majority on SmackDown Live, and then wild card effect like that was going to be a good idea while you had a brand split, and pretty much hasn't done anything for a majority of his run. He comes around not even chasing the world title. It's either him being a lackey or him being a bully, and most of it doesn't work, even though he has a longer stay in the company. He was debuted 2009, and he was released like 2014 or 13. I suspected a bit more of Drew McIntyre. Hopefully, he produces more in the storytelling factor, and he's given more time in the main event scene, because I feel like Drew McIntyre is one of the best talents out there. He's a former TNA World Champion, for God's sakes. I mean, I know TNA fucking sucks, and Impact is finally getting back on TV, but you gotta give it credit. Guys like Kurt Angle, Sting, AJ Styles held the belt. And Robert Roode, but still, it built up a sort of prestige that you at least know these guys. And people know Drew McIntyre, but not entirely, and we want him to be a household name. I think he can be a household name. Eric Young, also former TNA World Champion, shaves his fucking beard, being ripped off Daniel Bryan in the latter, still bankrupt, broke-ass years of TNA. And here he is, chasing down the 24/7 championship. He comes jobbing out to guys like Andrade. I mean, he shows he's a good wrestler. Other than that, he shows none of the comedic stride or any of his chippy personality he had on Impact, and he comes around becoming a jobber. Remember that Sanity faction that was on NXT? Alexander Wolf asked for his release. Killian Dane is pretty much a good brawler and a good wrestler to have as a single star back on NXT. And Nikki Cross was a former women's tag team champion. And here is Eric Young. Enough said. Jinder Mahal, former WWE World Champion. He comes around going to the Raw brand, doing nothing. He comes back to the SmackDown brand, does nothing. Gets injured, chases around R-Truth as the 24/7 champion. He just hasn't done anything. No way Jose is a complete jobber, kill himself. Rusev, you had a 4-month feud with Bobby Lashley. It ends in a botch of a tables match. If you guys continue this feud, I will, let alone, stop watching Raw for at least 2 minutes, because I have to do it. And just seeing this just showed how terrible the storytelling factor of it, how we don't really care about Lana having black dick and Rusev just standing there like a complete moron. That just undersold the feud entirely. Just by that one thing that kicked off the feud in the start of the premiere episode of Raw. And as much as Rusev is a good talent, he's likable and he shows that he can cement a crowd reaction. The potential he had, he just had nothing, and he's coming from a late injury. But still, the way it went, pretty terrible. The Iconics are fucking annoying, irritating, can't wrestle that well. Just, Jesus, they can't do anything. They held on to the 24/7 championship, the WWE Women's Tag Team belts for at least a few months after winning it at WrestleMania. They lose to Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross on a SmackDown, of all things, instead of on pay-per-view, where you guys need to elevate the belts to be in a bigger stage to show that there's at least some of the prestige. But how can you do that if you're only going to make makeshift tag teams? That's the thing with making belts that don't need to happen. It's like, at least cruiserweight tag team titles make a bit more sense. You have the Singh brothers. You can make something with Brian Kendrick and something. Kira Tozawa and something. Not fucking Beth Phoenix and Natalya. Even though Beth Phoenix was already a nominated Hall of Famer of the same year, and you still want to make sure she's a champion, like, that makes sense. The Iconics don't even have a memorable match. They got their ass kicked by the Kabuki Warriors a couple of times, and they come around just beating jobbers. How did that sell the factor that you guys deserve to be on TV? SmackDown is next. Apollo Crews, jobber. Carmella, waste of time. Dana Brooke, looks like a horse has Botox and liposuction in her stomach. She is completely worthless. Alexa Bliss, wasted potential. She hosted WrestleMania instead of having a title shot and being part of that main event. Even though she's one of the more better looking, more interesting, better on the mic women than Charlotte can be, better than Becky Lynch could be, and better than Ronda. Other than she looks like a little girl, at least she actually could be a bit more vicious in the ring than anything I could see in a Becky Lynch match. Next up, Dolph Ziggler. Just why? Just why are you still here? Drew Gallagher, Lana, Robert Roode, Roman Reigns, shocker, and Sami Zayn. Now for the legit list. This took 10 minutes of my time, and wrestling was pretty bad for WWE this year. So we're going to start with the Hardy Boys at number 10. Yikes. Most of what I've seen over the past several years, I wasn't there during the 90s, bro. I was born 99, so anything I developed with, it was the kickstart of the Ruthless Aggression era. And the Hardy Boys reunited in 2006. So the time I was watching, I wasn't there when they were facing off against the Dudleys, APA, the Edge and Christian. Just most of these guys that are in the Hall of Fame by now. And shockingly, Jeff Hardy already has a DUI, already got arrested. Matt Hardy's coming from an injury, and also other controversies. Terrible, just a lot of stuff just harboring good potential and wasted time. These guys haven't even been in an interesting storyline except that one time when Jeff Hardy was celebrating his 20th anniversary in the WWE, even though he was injured for most of that time, and he won the U.S. title one time before, I think, WrestleMania 34, and nobody remembers. Just making him a makeshift Grand Slam, like every other superstar with a tenure in this company. Just, we could have had dream matches before, and actually make sure there's more prestige with the SmackDown and Raw tag team titles. But you make them hold the SmackDown tag titles one time when they beat the Usos after a pay-per-view, and they did nothing else afterwards. Because Matt Hardy was injured. Then he came back later, and then he lose to Drew McIntyre in his return match on Raw a few weeks before. It's like you guys don't care. Braun Strowman at number 9. I tried my best to not get upset. But this is over Creative's fault. Because how the fuck do you make this guy's biggest accomplishments tag team gold for a dude his size and his abilities? Because all it is just shoulder tackle, get these hands. When it's obvious people only remember him and meme him because he said, I'm not finished with you yet. He's obviously wishing that he can play the heel role. Where we need better major heels other than Andrade and Drew McIntyre. That sort of heel or babyface, depending on what you saw a couple weeks ago when he was talking to Randy Orton. There's no legit heels, and Braun Strowman can play that heel. You could just make him say a few quips or something, but here he is. He won the greatest Royal Rumble like that even matters. He won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal this year and done nothing. The guy went over having a title opportunity at the Royal Rumble scuffed. Then he comes around till September to get a title shot for the Universal Championship. But this time you thought it was an easy threat. Thinks he had Rollins. Hell no! Rollins beat Lesnar twice on WrestleMania and the SummerSlam. There's no fucking chance in hell. It took 17 curb stomps and a pedigree and another curb stomp to take care of Braun Strowman. How in the hell? The match wasn't even that good. It was just repetitive, and Rollins was doing double duty. They had to defend their tag team goals. Yes, Braun Strowman was also a Raw Tag Team Champion again. So there was no point on doing that, because we know Rollins was going to retain at least one belt. Braun Strowman came from having an oh my god moment. He did have a cool moment with Bobby Lashley, the time when he speared him through the stage. But it didn't do much. That was ruined off with an oversaturated camera shot that spent at least 5 minutes until they cut off and Corey Graves said all shit. And it just showed how much they really don't care about Braun Strowman, and Braun Strowman is just he's just focusing on Twitter and more of his personal life, even though if he gets bigger in the company, you know his life is gonna get better, right? He knows that. And obviously he wants that. So why? Elias at number 8. I try my best because I like Elias. He's pretty good in the ring. And he is one of the best in crowd reaction and promos than a few guys like The Miz. That is still a premier promo specialist, thinks he actually learned from his mistakes. And as much as we don't give a shit how corny his promos is and how basic he is in the ring, the guy can make you care about a match at times. And when it was holding the Intercontinental Champion, when the World Champion wasn't doing it, because as good as AJ Styles is, he's not that important to watch. You know The Miz, because The Miz is a household name in the WWE. Not AJ Styles, and not Jinder Mahal, and not Baron Corbin, and sadly not Kevin Owens. You know The Miz. And here is Elias, that literally can make WrestleMania a whole freaking feel like his own singles performance. Who Wants to Walk with Elias is the most common thing you can hear whenever he says it. And he's entertaining as hell and has the best quips and comebacks you can see in wrestling today. The dude is borderline artist when it comes to promos. And he comes around just only holding the 24/7 championship and being another lucky for when Shane McMahon was having that little feud with Miz. He just was fucked. Just no screen time on the dude that can obviously get it done in the ring, looks the part. He's just, if Jeff Jarrett had charisma. And he's like, yeah, he had a guitar, he smashed it on people, and he talked crap. But he's actually he's a good looking dude, could wrestle, talk shit, means it, and thanks to the way he looks and the way he performs, he can back it up in the ring. That's a good wrestler. Why don't we do that? I don't want to see Cedric Alexander have 25 minutes or Humberto Carrillo have 25-minute matches and still end up losing to fucking AJ Styles or Carl Anderson. No one wants to see that. I would have him on the list, but he didn't have this, but he came in like middle of the brand split, so that does not count. I don't count latecomers into the main rosters. Kofi Kingston at number 7. Now you might be like, wait. Kofi Kingston won the WWE Championship, and he held it until the premiere episode on Fox of Friday Night SmackDown. He held it until October. Tell me, and I've been saying this a lot over most of my reviews that you've seen me do, because you know damn well I don't give a shit. Because the most memorable thing about Kofi Kingston's reign was you saw 2 black guys that are current indie wrestlers cry about him winning the title. And most of this was controversy because of an accident. And the only way they were pulling this off on TV was that he's a good wrestler and he's fun to watch, but you're like a black Rob Van Dam if we only cared about your other friends. Because I'd rather watch Biggie Langston, thinks he's fun, can talk, and actually looks threatening and actually looks like he can beat the shit out of you. Xavier Woods is talkative, charismatic, and actually funny. Kofi Kingston is just Kofi Kingston with less titties. His titties look like segregation. I don't want him holding our world title. I didn't want him holding our world title. And sure, you can find it ironic coming from a black guy that I'm saying this, but I didn't care about Kofi Kingston holding the world title. Kevin Owens. Dolph Ziggler, but he beat Randy Orton at Clash of Champions, and not in something like SummerSlam where it's a bigger stage and it feels more legit. That ended in a DQ finish because Randy Orton was close to his kids. Another world title defense that ended in a DQ. 2 years in a row. Samoa Joe and AJ Styles ended in DQ because of some personal shit at SummerSlam 2018, and then they did the same thing with Randy Orton and Kofi Kingston the same year. I don't remember one finish except that one time he jumped out of the steel cage. Not like legit jumped out of the steel cage on top. Like legit jumped through the door when Dolph Ziggler was coming close to get out. And sure, that sounded fun, but it's like one of those things you see in the Royal Rumble Kofi Kingston does. That's like, oh shit. But you're not going to remember Kofi Kingston holding the world title. You're going to be remembering him because of the moment that barely had much of a crowd reaction. People already knew it was predetermined that we were going to give Kofi Kingston the belt because we already saw the gear on WWE.com that he was going to hold the belt and the little podium set up for the WWE Championship. So I was like, fuck it. They were going to give him the belt either way. If you watched the pay-per-view, you actually knew what was going to happen. And I'm not saying this because I'm feeling salty because some other guys deserve the belt more than Kofi Kingston. I'm just doing this to how shoved off this was and how this didn't even change Kofi Kingston's character for the last, 6-7 months he was holding the WWE Championship. April to October. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. At all. Kofi Kingston never thought, oh, maybe I should have a little pep in my step. Maybe I should, change my characteristic. From the happy-go-lucky Negro that came around with the New Day, I'm still the happy-go-lucky Negro with the New Day, but I'm holding the WWE Championship. What? How does that not make you... How do you not look back in your career and not feel like, maybe I should have more control for people to remember me? Don't you forget this is one of the weaker decades of the WWE and how our ratings have fallen off and how less prestige our belts are that we give it to a guy that throws pancakes at little kids and cereal? Ain't that a bit depressing? His wrestling style came from just drop kicks, boom drops to Trouble in Paradise and a few splashes to just doing springboard coup de grace, a few clotheslines and still using the boom drop. None of his wrestling style, his character traits, or anything came in except for preaching that he should be WWE champion because of 11 years, and no one gave a shit except that one time when he was feuding with Randy Orton, and it felt like his career was going the right direction. His world title reign ended in 7 seconds when he faced off against Brock Lesnar because he knew he wasn't at anybody's level. And I'm sure Kofi Kingston knew it. And now every time he is on TV, he's spoken that he was WWE champion. People are like, I'm sorry you lost the world title. They gave it like it was he missed being a gold medalist at a field day at elementary school. How is that something to remember as WWE champion? Ron Simmons was legit world heavyweight champion. Booker T. I don't remember Kofi Kingston. And I'm going to be like that come next year. I don't give a crap. If that sounds rude, it's congrats to Kofi. That's all I'm going to give him. Congrats, man. That's a dream come true. You became WWE champion. And held it for as long as people expected you to hold it. That's incredible. Mojo Rawley. What happened to that little segments you had earlier this year when it came to I'm a failure? I suck. My mom should have swallowed me while I was born. Let me put this face down on. Anybody remember that? Mojo Rawley just came into having a few squash matches on Raw, and then he comes around chasing the 24/7 championship to getting pimp slapped by Kevin Owens to a slap of reality. Thinks nobody knew what was happening. My man accidentally got the red pill slapped to his face by Kevin Owens. My man didn't even know he was in the same reality as us. He came around, didn't he win the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal while his irrelevant tag team partner from the Hype Bros, Zack Ryder. Sure, he's a loser, but he's also a former tag team champion, U.S. champion, and Intercontinental champion. At least moments that you remember, because one time he was over. Mojo Rawley wasn't over. He can't wrestle. He ain't interesting. He's a dumb big man that can't wrestle. And he can't even do a promo. Sami Zayn had to come on Raw so he could actually say something to a top star like Kevin Owens. Mojo Rawley can't even be saved by developmental right now. He sucks. He sucks. I might get a bit of lash for this. Because I know people were anticipating this for the longest time. And that's Bray Wyatt, the Fiend. And yes, his Firefly Funhouse segments are somewhat entertaining. His wrestling ability did diminish, though. How it came into him being a surprisingly agile threat, and him being a charismatic cultist that controls scary big men to do his bidding, into being a puppet guy and wearing a retarded cum rag mask with teeth on it. I'm sorry, and as much as, okay, it's threatening, people like it, and it makes money. People want to see the Fiend. That's a smart move. But other than that, it didn't really do much. The guy has more Firefly Funhouse than I legit see the Fiend. His feuds end up being quick, easy, and undersold. The top draw on your company is already having crappy matches. And most of them are afterthoughts. Hell in a Cell match that was supposed to be the biggest match of the year, with Seth Rollins finally losing the title to a guy that's actually over. Ends in DQ. Has a 1-week feud with The Miz at Survivor Series. Finn Balor, no, it wasn't even Demon Finn Balor. He ends it in a few minutes. What storytelling was this supposed to come by? What was this about the Fiend? What was the development of the Fiend? And all this now, I know it's foreshadowing for the future. The Fiend is just now getting on TV, but now he's given the Universal Championship, and it looks so stupid on him. His gimmick sort of works for that little different personality thing, but I'm not digging with it. It feels corny. It's at least threatening, at least. Mandible Claw, really? Though, but Sister Abigail was already a pretty decent finisher to use. Other than that, it's not that interesting. It doesn't hit me as much, and sure, you guys can disagree with me. It's my opinion. You guys don't have to take it. And hey, if it makes you feel better, you could just take a guy from, like, my honorable mentions list and put it as number 5 to replace Bray Wyatt. Next up is Baron Corbin. The dude won King of the Ring. And no one cares. It's like what Edge said. He ain't going to Billy Gunn this King of the Ring. He's going to make it prestigious. Edge is a Hall of Famer. Baron Corbin pinned Kurt Angle. McIntyre pinned Kurt Angle first. What prestige has he gotten? He failed winning Money in the Bank. The dude has been pinned by nearly everybody. He has no promo ability in the world. And the most impactful thing he does on SmackDown is talk dog food and mock a wrestler because his nickname is a Big Dog. The guy has no way of getting himself heat other than go get out of my TV heat. How's that showing that you're a agonizing heel? You know how bad you are when your most memorable part of your wrestling matches is when you got German suplexed by a 5-foot grappler out of Shorty G. And the less of that, the best. Because he's been sucking up raw screen time for a majority, trying to get in the GM role, get a Universal title picture, and he comes around not being memorable for anything. And it just shows in his wrestling, and it just shows in the screen time they give him that he either doesn't care, loses interest, or thinks he's going somewhere with it. but no one cares to watch. Next up is the OC. Rip off the Club faction, rip off Bullet Club faction, but they still do the Too Sweet thing. AJ Styles is the only wrestler there. Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows won the Raw Tag Team titles this year, but did nothing. They lost to the Viking Raiders' first title defense. They come around losing to almost any other babyface tag group, except to Humberto. They suck the life out of almost any of their screen time AJ Styles get, other than they have crappy catchphrases and a t-shirt that's obviously based on Japan. They have segments that come around like thinking that they have history with AJ Styles to thinking that they are a threatening tag team. They hold around a trophy that means nothing, like it was being the best in the world trophy for Shane McMahon. But we know as soon as he comes back on TV, nobody's going to remember a damn thing. Thanks in Saudi, and if Natalya accidentally tears a t-shirt, they're going to stone her with a fucking red brick. There was just no reason for this to be a faction other than we need a faction on Raw for major heel heat. And AJ Styles is just going to be the major contributor of why in the hell this team is even having TV time in the first place. That's pretty much it. Number 2, Lacey Evans. She came in having a 2-month feud with Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship. To doing those over monotonous, like it started since her debut to like June, I think, or May. She was continuing to do those little interrupt Raw with her little strut and continue like coming back and walking in. It's like the Emelina. It was like the Emelina segment, except she still has a contract. Because like Emelina, she's currently on Ring of Honor. And Lacey Evans is now feuding with Bayley. So now watching SmackDown, just watching SmackDown and Raw when she was on, it just showed that she had no promo ability. Even when she can wrestle, her finisher is still a punch to the face. Her finisher, forearm punch to the face thing, the women's right barely looks threatening. It's not used in a decisive manner. We got her looking like a she-male Charlotte Flair, but less prestige over the name and less athleticism and less anything. She can't sell. She can't show that she's a threatening wrestler other than she's a throwback feminist wrestler. And pretty much that's it. There's not really that much in the Lacey Evans. She kind of wasted here. She didn't even hold on to a belt. She was in a short program, and I think it's going to be the same thing. They might give her a match at on the Royal Rumble against Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship. I think there's going to be 27 title defenses and 2 Royal Rumbles. Great. And number 1, Lars Sullivan. I wanted to talk about him for the longest time, and it's not because his porn video got leaked. Grow up. Just grow up. It's not because his porn video got leaked that I despise Lars Sullivan. He's a hypocritical, faggot, piece of shit loser that can't wrestle. That is completely oblivious to mental health issues and why in the hell you're still wrestling. Come around having these over-pushed shots of him being the freak, even though they already have Braun Strowman as a physically imposing big man that can literally make an ambulance tip. How in the fuck you needed Lars Sullivan for that? Well, you already have Braun Strowman. That was my waste of screen time and how much he was feeding over early January until like after I think WrestleMania. He comes allowed losing to the Lucha Bros. to the Lucha House Party, and feuding with the Lucha House Party for majority of the year. Then he comes around saying that he has seizures. Then he comes around saying that he has, I think, some kind of anxiety. Some anxiety issues. And then come around showing these tweets, showing that he's a homophobe, sexist, and a douchebag. He's just a fuck all waste of time. The guy's a waste of breath. What kind of superstar do you want him to be? He comes around saying, I'm a freak. I'm sucking dick. The dude allowed himself to get a blowjob. That was interesting and a waste of 8 minutes for me. The guy comes around showing that he has nothing except he can clothesline, whip midgets with his hand, and chuck them down on the floor. The guy comes around wasting his time and struggling with the Lucha House Party. Then you're telling me he's the next big thing? There's a thing I have with a wasted year for a wrestler. They can come back on that if they have a certain attribute. Drew McIntyre, Apollo Crews, Bobby Lashley, Rusev, fuck it, Lana. They have a characteristic, they have a look, they have staying power, and they have wrestling ability. Lars Sullivan looks like he looks like Hephaestus from God of War had tits and was 6'7". He looks ugly, he's dumb, he's fucking untalented, and he has no promo ability. He has no ability. Then he's big, heavy, and Keith Lee could wrestle the shit out of him. Just come on, man. What were you expecting from him? An overhyped mess that already got himself in trouble before he came into the main roster. And already with this many issues, there was no point giving him a contract if he had this many problems in the first place and that had that many controversy. He comes around way too frequently over his time there in the first place, and then he comes around wrestling midgets. And what gives him the ability that he's going to stay here for long? We already had the chopping block this year with so many releases that even Sin Cara asked for his release. Sin Cara, Simbacha, that now, over the late 2010s, had a bit of a renaissance thanks he barely even botched. And had his best matches with freaking Andrade in that ladder match he had back at WrestleMania 31. 32. That was crazy. And now Lars Sullivan want to ask for the release. He has his sex tape. He has a sex video leaked. And he does nothing with it. You do your thing, fam, but know that you suck. And there's nothing to change that. At least I know some guys in the bottom half of the top 10 list can bounce back from this year. Lars Sullivan had an entire year to himself. He had TV time. He has no spatial hypothesis of how he wants to convey his character. He somehow has these issues, and it's been so late for him to issue it right now that he delayed this much hype for him to come up to the main roster. Even though we already got big men that can do way more impressive stuff. And then him talking this shit on Twitter when he was like 20-something years old. It's not that important, but still, it's a bad look. Man, it's a bad look. So that made you an overhyped mess. And that's why you share number 1 on the rest with these superstars. I want to thank everybody for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and like me ragging on people for doing their life's work. This is the DST Show. Thank you for watching.